So on Malaysia, let's use the case of Malaysia. So I'm a company in Malaysia. How does it works? And like you mentioned, if I'm a company there, I can do everything there. So that case study is very interesting for other governments around the world, because a lot of countries don't have that. Even in Europe, Europe has this abstract stuff. But okay, if I'm a business, where do I go? So, and I think if you could use that case study as a way to explain companies how it works, and I'm sure for people listening to us from around the world, they might be interested to take that to other countries. And I'm sure the experience there, and you mentioned as well the World Bank, I'm sure there's a lot of synergies there.
Sure. So I'll just give you a quick example how it works. So Malaysia has, for example, nature-based assets. Let's say there's sustainable farming in Malaysia that goes through an accredited process of bringing energy efficiencies into it, bringing so-called additionality into their process that generates creditable credits on carbon, right? So now they need to submit those into a certification platform, so that they first need to generate that data, they need to report that data, they need to certify that data, and they need and once it's certified, those credits can be issued on a registry that then makes it available to marketplaces, so they can trade that data, and therefore they get an income from following the process for generating carbon credits, right? So they're doing that already today, but they're doing it in a sort of very analog fashion. So, a large agricultural company that's adopting these methodologies, adopting these processes, they would hire a consultant. Their consultant would then, create both a hardware and a software sort of, solution whereby they collect all of the data that's being generated. They measure that data, they report that data, they verify that data. Then they submit that into a certification body. That certification body will review it, will authorize, will certify and then pass that on to the registry or the front office, where the credits will then be issued. Once those credits are issued, then they find marketplaces that are in their alliance, or that accept the credits that come from that particular certification body. And today, those bodies, I mean, that entire process is dominated by 2 or 3 big players, namely Vera, Gold, IREC. They're like 80% of the market, if not more, actually. That analog process exists today. It just does not exist. It's just not available to enough players. And there are too many parts of the economy that sit on the sidelines, because the value proposition of going through that whole process is just not very compelling to them, right? So if I'm a facilities operator, even though I produce, like I'm a data center, I produce a huge amount of energy emissions through my power usage, but I'm not, and I am adopting energy efficiency processes to reduce that power consumption and make it more efficient. But I'm not, submitting that for verification, for certification, and then thereby monetizing it. Why? Because the cost and the time and the effort of doing that is significant. And so, rather than take that significant effort, I simply let that sideline. I'm happy with a lower, power bill, and that's where the story ends. Now, when we come in and offer essentially a digitized solution for people to kind of plug and play into, it encourages not just the big owners of assets like the nature-based assets, but also the other parts of the economy to participate in the process. And it just reduces a lot of the frictionality involved. It reduces a lot of the turnaround time involved. It reduces a lot of the costs involved. So thereby, that's why I follow the same theme. We bring transparency, we bring efficiency, we bring scalability. We do it by all those things.
And just to add to that,
go ahead, Hirander. Yeah.
It's interesting because once that process is digitized and that inventory is part of a construct that's now effectively in, let's say, Malaysia, a digital registry, it solves a lot of challenges, because with the analog process, let's say the Bursa recently launched its carbon credits market. Of course, there's lots of supply in Malaysia, but there was a limited number of demand side clients. But now all of a sudden you can connect into this hub and spoke model with ZERO13, and you can distribute those credits all over the world and tap into demand in a distributed fashion wherever it may be, in any part of the world. Then subsequently, you can then use the settlement network that ZERO13 has, because there's a big problem about, I deliver, you pay, but who delivers first and who pays, right? And how do we settle this? So now all of a sudden you can also do that digitally and link that to whether it's deposit tokens at a bank or it's actual fiat currency locked in accounts and pre-funded. So you get that settlement finality so that those selling the credits get the funds as well seamlessly, or wherever they may sell them across the world. And then subsequently, everyone speaks about blockchain as one ubiquitous technology, but as you and I know, and as Asad knows, there are multiple blockchains. So also using ZERO13, we can now go cross-chain and swap transactions. If the buyer's on one chain, the seller's on another, because the credits are there, you can now affect those transactions irrespective of the chain. So, and use APIs to link in some of those analog players as well, so that you're not excluding those, because of course they're very, very important, and they have assets there, or some of them as venues or buyers will have some degree of demand for liquidity. So when you bring all that together, it creates that kind of network effect, which will help grow the market. But ultimately, there's one other point there that's important. You mentioned Sustainify, but sustainable finance is important, and finance does help this whole process, because project development needs finance. So some of the processes need finance as well. So when we speak about national stock exchanges, one of the questions I got asked at this event by a national stock exchange was, why is this relevant to us, or why are we relevant to this? Of course, there's the example of Bursa Malaysia that's launched its own carbon credits exchange, whereas Bursa Malaysia is a securities and derivatives market, but obviously an exchange operator. In Saudi Arabia, Tadwell, the national stock exchange, has partnered with PIF, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and they'll be launching a market starting with a voluntary auction that they'll run in Kenya initially. So all of a sudden, existing stock exchanges are launching markets. But one of the other responses I gave to that question was, and as Asad pointed out, these national exchanges are important because they're links to finance. So we can now work with them, and we can distribute out green bonds and project bonds, which again, in tandem with those forward financing contracts, brings much needed capital into the ecosystem, and then which also then in turn drives growth.
Fantastic.